It's happening with Russia, and now we're seeing it with Iran. When you have countries that are confident enough, that have developed means to say no to demands. You know, the Armada and all this buildup is not that big. You know, Larry Johnson, our friend, said it's not that big. You know, it's similar to what we saw with Yemen. It's similar to what we saw in after October 7th. Iran is saying they're not scared, similar to Russia. They're saying, no, we're not backing down to threats. What does someone like Trump and the administration actually do here?
It's a brick wall when the brick wall spells out sovereignty. Yep. There are not many, Danny, we all know around the world who can exercise sovereignty. Apart from the big guys, Russia and China, Iran is among the very few. Yemen, tiny Yemen, the part that is controlled by Houthis, is another player. Cuba, under zillions of sanctions since the
starving
beginning,
now, being starved,
it's still sovereign, and it's still resisting. But you have big powers, and let's go straight to the point, like Brazil and India. They're not sovereign. They will never
folded fast
to face the US frontally, like Iran has.
Yep.
So, you know, this. I think many of us are hoping, I would say in a Chinese auspicious way, that the whole global South is paying attention. That, you know, if you're not sovereign, you won't be respected by the hegemon, number one. Two, if you are sovereign, you stand a chance of staring the hegemon down. So I think everybody's paying attention to these two lessons. And it's great that Iran is teaching the global South these lessons on the go, literally. And, you know, maybe, let's say, okay, a few weeks ago, many of us were thinking, is this regime change thing going to work? Because in the beginning, it seemed that it was working. It was a matter only a few days for the whole thing to collapse. You know, why? Because they had good intel from their top partners, because they understood what they are up against, because they compared what was happening this time in Iran with previous attempts at color revolutions elsewhere, and because they cracked down big time. There's no other way. There's no other way. You cannot control a regime change operation without cracking down. That's it. And okay, the European Union is saying that you kill thousands of people. Bullshit. They published a list of people that died during the protests. And most of them, they were part of police forces, part of government structures, etc. So the lesson for the Global South was, once again, Iran showing the Global South how you do it. But why they can do that? First of all, because they are completely sidelined from the Western financial system. Second, because they have two very important powers behind them. And if they need anything specific, they can get from both Russia and China. Very, very few nations are in this situation. And even big nations inside BRICS. And that brings us to something that I wanted to talk to you about and to our audience. What the number one guy for BRICS in Russia, Sergei Ryabkov, number two at the foreign ministry, has been saying. Let me see if I can get his an example of what he said. Then because he said many things about START, about Russia-US relations, but what he said about BRICS, don't forget, this guy is the number one Russian Sherpa for BRICS. So everything happening inside BRICS that it's important is coordinated in Russia by Ryabkov. He said very diplomatically, because he's a first-class diplomat, BRICS is expected to make progress this year on payment mechanisms and the use of national currencies. So this is the Minister of Foreign Relations in Russia diplomatically saying that this high-speed train has left the station already and is going to pick up a lot of speed up to the summit in India in November. Collaboration inside BRICS. The door to BRICS remains open. This is what the Russians have been saying since Kazan, October 2024. But the group is currently focused on integrating new members. Of course, now there are 10, and strengthening cooperation with partners. Don't forget, there are also 10. So you have to get this 10 plus 10, 20, agreeing on most important issues. Huge task. So he talks about the BRICS Sherpas meeting. This is very, very important. He puts it in a way that may sound almost casual, but this is immensely important, because if they do this, then Trump 2.0 is going to be in big, 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 big shit. The BRICS Sherpas meeting discussed the need to speak with one voice on pressing international issues. So this means every important international issue, let's say throughout this year already, leading up to the summit in India, there's got to be a unified BRICS position. Immensely important. This includes everything from the kidnapping of Maduro to the threat, to the trying to destroy Lebanon, to threats against Iran, to threats against Colombia, Mexico, Greenland, whatever. Bon, and the final one, very, very important. BRICS needs further progress in creating financial and payment mechanisms resistant to outside pressure. And that connects to that decision by the Reserve Bank of India a few weeks ago. In fact, I think we already talked about that, and with all of your other guests as well, that there's going to be news on the BRICS Pay front before this, or even during the summit in India later this year. Because the deadline for BRICS Pay was 2027. Now it's 2026. And they want a consensus this year, and possibly to present during this. If they do this in India later this year, this is the groundbreaking thing. I think Trump is going to have to invade 20 countries the next day if they announce.
We see China's banks talking about dumping more U.S. Treasury bonds. Yeah.
Absolutely. They are dumping en masse, in fact. And this order comes straight from the top, Danny. Right. Get rid, by all means necessary, of everything that you have. Yeah. And now accelerate it. Used to be little by little, like a Chinese calling his courtier in Wall Street to say, can I sell? No. Now it's an avalanche.
Sergey Lavrov was on BRICS TV, and
that was a killer. Oh, yes.
He had some choice words for the Trump administration, especially in Donald Trump. He called, I'll just pull it up, what Donald Trump is doing as Bidenism. He used that exact word, pure Bidenism, which Trump and his team supposedly, it says just team reject, supposedly reject. Nevertheless, the law was extended. He's talking about the sanctions law. Sanctions against Russia continue, and sanctions were imposed on Lukoil and Rosneft. Talking about the whole of the Anchorage meeting, the spirit of Anchorage being soiled by the Trump administration's own policies.
Lavrov is usually very polite, very circumspect. This one is Lavrov unplugged. Really, this is really, really hardcore. I had selected another one of his formulations, and this one is an absolute killer, because basically what he's saying is that the spirit of Anchorage is dead in a Lavrovian, very diplomatic way. But then he says this. The United States seeks to bring all processes in the areas I mentioned. He was talking about START, he was talking about Ukraine, he was talking about US, Russia, etc., under its strict control, and demands unilateral concessions. Well, we all know this is how the Americans negotiate with anybody, right? Back to Lavrov. Without giving up contacts with them, this is a very polite way of saying, look, we keep trying to talk. It's up to them if they want to talk or not. So the Russians are not going to abandon the contacts. To the extent that they are willing to engage on a mutually beneficial basis. This is very, very important. Okay, we will talk to them, but we hope that they want to have a mutually beneficial basis. If it's only for their own profit, obviously we are not interested. And then he says, we are interested, if it goes on like this. But the most important part he saves for the ending. To get